Have you ever had a moment where you realized that if you had not challenged your own fear, if you had not challenged your limitation, your own limitation, you would not be where you are today? That happened to me recently. Last week, I was invited to speak for a school district. It was a restorative talk for mental health professionals, counselors, school staff, people who are holding so much in the school system. And while I was there, I had this moment where I felt proud. Proud because I knew what it took for me to get there. I knew the version of me who, a few years ago, would have told herself, "You are not ready for this," that I needed more years, that I needed another title, that I needed to become a supervisor first, that I needed to have more experience before I can teach other professionals. And I remember thinking, if I had not had a conversation with a friend of mine a few years ago where she helped me see that a lot of what I was calling preparation was actually limitation, and I probably would not have been in that room last week. I would have still be waiting, because guess what? I am not a supervisor at my job. I am not a manager. I do not have the exact title that I thought I needed before I could put myself out there in that way. And yet, I was in that room. I was speaking, teaching, sharing what I know, holding space, and all of that made me reflect on my own journey, my whole journey. Reflect on how I got here, how many times I thought I needed something else before I could take the next step, how many times I was looking outside of myself for permission, and how a lot of the time the thing that I thought I was waiting for was actually not really a requirement. It was fear. It was limitation. It was me telling myself I had to follow somebody else's path before I could follow my own. So today I want to talk about waiting to feel ready, about the limitations we put on ourselves, about what happened when we keep telling ourselves, I need to do this first before I can do that. And I also want to share my story because this is also something I see very often in the therapy room. I see it with clients. I see them waiting, wanting something, feeling pulled towards something, knowing that there is more, but then the fear comes, the limitation comes, the story comes. And when I see it, I like to pause there. I like to help them look at it because I was there too. Hey, I'm Zephyr, a licensed therapist, and this is W Ap Koute M. You are listening to me, I am listening to you. Today, I want to start with my story because when I think about my career and the path that brought me here, it was not a straight line. It was not something where I knew exactly what I was doing from the beginning, but there was always something inside of me that knew I wanted to do something meaningful. Since I was little, when I thought about my career, I always felt I wanted to do something complicated. I didn't know why. I don't know why, but in my mind, it had to be something that required a lot of studying. It had to be complex. It had to challenge my brain. And now looking back, hindsight is 2020, right? I can see that maybe even then, there was already something in me that was drawn to the complex of the mind. Obviously, I did not have the language for it. I did not know what therapy was going to mean in my life. I didn't even know what therapy was, but I knew I was interested in people, interested in how people think or how people feel, believe, how they relate to each other. And I also knew I wanted to help. At first, I thought that meant medicine. My late uncle was a gynecologist, and growing up, I remember being so impressed by what he did. I remember thinking about, oh, he helps women give birth. He removed fibroids. He did things that to me felt big and complicated and important. So in my mind, I thought maybe that is what I wanted to do, right? Become a doctor, work with the body. And for me, it was a very complex thing to do. So when I immigrated to the United States after high school, I went to community college as a pre-med student. And that was the plan, right? But before I can really get deep into that path, people around me started explaining what medical school looked like here. They told me that it would take time, it would take money, that I would need a lot of support, and most importantly, that once I go to medical school, I probably will not be able to work the same way. And since my parents were still in Haiti, I remember thinking that, okay, financially, this was not realistic. I had just come here, and it was, me and my little brother, and I was working. And I didn't see a path where I could stop working once I was ready for medical school. Then I started thinking, okay, what else can I do that is still complex, still connected to the body, and still help people? Then I thought about nursing. I continued taking classes. I got my associate degree in the pre-med direction. But when it was time for me to transfer into nursing school, it did not happen the way I thought it would. In California, at the time, many nursing programs had a lottery system. You could apply, but your name had to be picked. And I applied to so many schools, I think 13 or 14 schools, and my name was not coming up. So I didn't try the private school route. I got accepted, but it was too expensive. And because I was under 24, they wanted an adult to co-sign for the loan. And I did not have that because my parents were still in Haiti. So I had to say no to that offer. I remember feeling stuck. So I took a break. I said, okay, I'm going to keep applying until I get accepted. And I remember talking to my brother. I had a conversation with him where he told me to, while waiting to still go to school and get a bachelor or start with a bachelor actually while waiting and take the undecided major route. So it made sense to me. I was like, okay, instead of losing the whole year, right, let me just go back and transfer anyway, which I did. I transferred as undecided. While I was there, I actually took a nutrition class, and I remember how passionate and my professor was when she was talking about her work with pregnant women, especially women who had diabetes or complications during pregnancy, and how she helped them with nutrition and meal prep. So that inspired me, and I immediately saw another route, right? And I was like, okay, this one I don't have to wait, but I will still be helping pregnant women. So I switched from undecided to nutrition. And then when it was time for me to meet with my counselor to register for the exact classes, now that I had a path that I was looking at, and then she looked at all my prerequisites and my associate degree, and quickly she saw what was happening, and she told me, I see what you're doing. You're trying to get into nursing, and now you're switching to nutrition because you haven't gotten accepted. And she told me she knew about it because a lot of nursing students do the same thing. When they don't get accepted, they switch to nutrition. But one thing she said changed the whole thing for me. She explained to me that nutrition also had its own challenge, and that there was a final exam at the end of that exam. Just unlike nursing school, you don't get accepted. So from the beginning, you can kind of change your course. But for nutrition, with the final exam, if you don't score really, really high, or I believe she said if you don't have a really high GPA, something like that, like almost 4.0, then you might not be qualified to sit for the exam. And then in that case, you would have just a bachelor in nursing and end up working at a hospital kitchen. And when she said that, I felt like my world crashed, because now I felt like I had nothing. What I thought to myself that, okay, this is the end. This is it, I guess. That's the end. I felt defeated for sure. She saw the look in my eyes, and she suggested for me to see a career counselor. I made the appointment. I went to the career counselor, and I remember that lady was just talking, and nothing she was saying was clicking because the heavy feeling was still there. And then she ended up giving me a list of careers, and none of them spoke to me. Nothing felt like the thing I wanted to do. And then I remember I went back, sat somewhere on the school campus, and I started thinking about who I was. Not just what sounded impressive or complex, but I went back to my early years in Haiti. And I started thinking back to high school. In Haiti, you grow up with many of the same classmates for years. New people comes, but many of the same people continues with you for, since elementary to middle school to high school. And I started thinking about my friendships. I started thinking about the deep conversation I used to have with my friends, how my friends would come to me for advice, how they saw me as a reliable friend, and how I could connect really with people. I was interested in what was happening underneath what people were saying. I also thought about my own relationship at the time because it started in high school, and it was a healthy relationship, which is not always what you expect at such a young age. We were teenagers when we started, and eventually we got married. He's my husband now. But then that made me think about people, emotions, the way I understood certain things. That's when psychology came to my mind. I said, okay, let's try psychology. Now, I had taken a psychology class before when I was doing my associate degree, and I almost did not pass that class. Looking back, I think part of it was the teacher, but also the other part of it was I had just come to the United States. I was still learning English and trying to understand theories like Freud and all of these college level concepts in English was a lot for me. So I had some hesitation, but I told myself, let me take more psychology classes and see. And when I did, I loved it. One class after another, one professor after another, it became more interesting to me. Started looking at my professors as inspiration. I would listen to them explain theories and human behavior, and I remember thinking, this is the complexity that I have been looking for. Because a lot of the classes or a lot of teaching was pointing to one thing: how complex the human being. Even though there's a lot of studies out there that talk about, how the brain works, how the nervous system and all that, how we respond to threat, but there's still little that we know about the brain, because human beings are complex. And that was the part that I love about this work, because even when two people have the same diagnosis, they do not experience it in the same way. You can have 10 clients with depression, and yes, some of the symptoms may have the same name. For example, low motivation, sadness, changes in sleep and appetite, feeling hopeless. But the way it shows up in each person is still unique, right? The person's story is different. Their culture is different. The relationships that they are in or they have are different. And the nervous system, also tell the story, their own unique story. The meaning they attach to when they are experiencing it is different. And I think that is one of the things I love most about being a therapist. It is sitting with people and helping them understand themselves, because I always believe the person is the expert. I'm not here to tell you who you are. I'm not here to tell you what to do with your life. I'm here to guide you, to ask questions, to help you reflect, to help you dig deeper, to help you notice things that maybe you did not have language for yet. And while I was taking classes, I also thought about what the next step will be. At first, I thought probably couples therapy, because I thought about my healthy relationship, and I said, oh, okay, I could help couples, which is funny now because I don't even do couples therapy right now. I never done couples therapy since I started. And some of the professors also were talking about the different type of therapies that we could do once we get a master's, and also the different masters that are out there that can actually we can actually do therapy with. So I remember learning about social work, LPCC, and marriage and family therapy. And at the time, that professor was also teaching at another university at a graduate level, where the masters, some of the masters program, they were giving them at that university. And after I graduated with my bachelor's, I wanted to take a break. My plan was to just start a career, go to work, get at least 1 year of experience, and then get back to my master. I actually got a job as a behavioral specialist. I was going to home of autistic children and providing applied behavioral therapy, ABA. I was teaching skills, following behavior plans, working with children and families. I did learn a lot, but also very quickly I realized I felt limited because as a behavior specialist with a bachelor degree, I was just implementing the plan. Then the supervisors who had a master degree were the ones creating the plan. They were the ones conceptualizing the plan. They were the ones deciding where we're taking the clients next. And I remember thinking that this was something I wanted to do. And this kind of was a position I wanted to be in, like the one creating plan, the one understanding, the one to think through the case. I wanted to use, my brain in that sense. Yes, I was still implementing the skills. Yeah, I was still, it was my own way of teaching the skills to my clients. So I did learn a lot, but I also wanted to do more. Another thing that I realized is that I did not want to continue with the ABA path because I felt limited to one population. And I wanted to be able to help a different population because with ABA, it's mostly autism. So I wanted to be able to help with other mental disorder as well. So it did not take me too long to go back and register for my graduate degree, which I studied in January 2017. And the only reason I didn't start in the fall of 2016 is because of that new job that I had. And in order for me to change my schedule around, I needed to be with the company for at least 6 months. So I waited these 6 months. But before the 6 months came, I had already applied and get accepted to the master program. There again, I got so inspired, and it felt so right that I was at the right place. My professors were doing complex work. I remember one of them was doing therapy with people in jail. And mind you, there were people that were not getting out. Many people that did bad things. And I remember feeling in awe on how, she was still helping them and being compassionate and understanding their humanity, right? So I kept being inspired and feeling like this is it. This is what I always wanted. A year after taking the classes, then we had to go to practicum. And practicum is when you get to really do the work in real life, right? We spent a year learning about theories and applying them with each other in the room. But a practicum was, okay, you go out there, you do the work. And I studied at an elementary and middle school site. And that work was very challenging because most of the time, the student did not want to be in my room because they were referred for behaviors in the class. Some of them could care less about me being there, but also I was pulling from my ABA background, which helped me connect on a deeper level with children. I was using both at this time. I knew how to use play, how to enter their world. And also part of it was the practicum site that I was. Most of it actually did a lot of training for us. We had training in play therapy, scent therapy, and other approaches. And then we had supervisors meeting twice a week. One thing I started realizing that I was doing when I was in the outside world doing the work, I would compare myself a lot to my supervisors, to whoever had been doing therapy longer than me. And I remember telling myself what it would take to get there, because I was in awe on how they can take a case and conceptualize it, and then help come up with a treatment for that client. So I was like, okay, when do I get there? Because obviously I felt like I didn't know what I was doing. I was in the womb trying things left and right, but really, especially with kids, it takes time to see progress. Young kids specifically, right? Teenagers too, but sometimes they like to talk and you can see the progress. And I wasn't getting that feedback, but also I was new. And I remember trying to understand or asking questions about how long my supervisors were doing therapy to kind of say, okay, this is how long I need to be a therapist for me to eventually be like them. And then also I remember telling myself, like, okay, they are also supervisors. So that was the proof, right? Once I become a supervisor, that's gonna be a proof that, okay, I am in that level. Sometimes some of them were 5 years in, 6 years in, licensed. And I thought to myself, that's what I need. I need to wait 5 years from now and do therapy until I get there. And then I need the title, the supervisor title, and all of that. And in California, after you're done with your practicum, you get your degree. Then you go on and complete your 3,500 hours before you can sit for the licensing exam. I started working for a community mental health agency that was also in the school system. I became a school therapist. I was in a high school, but also seeing students from the nearby elementary and middle school. And while I was collecting my hours, I was always looking on the outside for proof that I was progressing. I was looking for the next title or the next year that's going to make it 2 years, 3 years. I was always looking outward for proof that I was ready, or even validation from other people that I was good enough. And I did not realize that every time I was sitting with a client, holding space, asking questions, learning, reflecting, consulting, I was already becoming. I was already learning how to do the work, but I was so focused on where I wanted to be that I did not always see what was actually happening. And 4 years ago, fast forward to 4 years ago, I started working with a good friend of mine around finances and bigger picture things in life and career. And she started pointing out limitations that I did not even see as limitation. She asked me questions that made me think higher than how I was thinking. She asked me what I wanted to do with what I knew, with my skills, with my passion. And my answers were, maybe after becoming a supervisor, I want to teach. I like psychoeducation a lot. I know I have the skill or I have the passion to teach it so people can understand. And especially in the Haitian community, I always wanted to bring therapy or psychoeducation to my community because I did not know a lot growing up, but also reflecting on my maybe in Haiti, I can see where a lot of the issues or a lot of the things that I saw growing up had to do with mental health. But I was putting it in the back of my head, or because I wasn't a supervisor yet, I wasn't a manager yet, and that I wasn't 6 years post license. And she started helping me see that their path was not mine, that their strength did not cancel my own. Their calling did not mean that mine had to look the same. And that's something that a lot of us do. That's something we do a lot of times. We look at someone else's path and turn it into a woo for our own. We say, because they did it this way, I have to do it this way. Because they waited this long, I have to wait this long. Because they have this title, I need that title before I start. But what if that is not true? What if their path is their path and your path is your path? What if the thing in you does not need to look exactly like the thing in them? When I understood that, I started putting myself out there. My first speaking engagement was in 2024. I spoke about trauma to the Haitian community in Austin, exactly what I've been wanting to do. And people were listening, people learned, and they were asking questions, and something clicked. This is part of what I was supposed to do, that I am supposed to do. I am a therapist, yes, but I can also teach. I can also speak. I can also bring this information to the community in ways that feels accessible. And since that day, after that, I did not really look back. I continue to reach out to other organizations, putting myself out there, and I continue following that feeling inside instead of making somebody else's path the standard of mine. And it was the same thing with this podcast. I've been wanting to start a podcast since 2022, and I've had so many conversations with my friends about it, about the desire and the idea that I had, and that I wanted to be out there and educate, psychoeducate, and create a space, especially for Haitian mental health conversation. But I kept thinking about, I don't have the exact equipment, the microphone, the background, the sound, right? Going on YouTube, watching a lot of videos over and over and over, the foam square that people put on the wall so the sound does not bounce. Instead of helping, it actually made the process feel very complicated, feel like I wasn't ready, I wasn't there yet. And also because I was working full-time, married, raising 2 young children, and living life, I would research, get overwhelmed, put it down, come back, get distracted, and then more time would pass. But then while I was putting myself right for speaking, in 2025, I met someone at a book signing. We had just met that day. We started just talking about, what we do in life. And she mentioned she had a podcast. And I told her about my desire to have a podcast. And she said, "You do?" She said, "Oh, yeah. Haitian people need that. They would benefit for it." And she told me that she could help. I was in shock. I was like, really? And for me, by the way, I thought helping meant slowly take me there. She would get with me and tell me, the tricks, and then I would, sit and process all of that. But no, she was not playing. She gathered a few of her friends and people she knew that wanted to start a podcast. And she had a Zoom call, just one Zoom call. In my mind, I'm showing there, I'm taking notes, going back, living my life, and then start when I'm ready. But no, she came ready, and she came with dates that we had to pick to release the podcast. I was like, wait a minute. I need time to process all of this to breathe. But because it's something that I had been wanting for so long, I went with it. At first, I picked one of the later dates for my first episode because I was so nervous. But the trailer, she wanted us to release it, I think, within 2 weeks of that Zoom call. And since the trailer was short, I was like, okay, I think I can do that, but I need a break after the trailer, after releasing the trailer, before I come up with the first episode. So I remember choosing a time all the way in November. But when I dropped that trailer, the trailer went viral. And she looked at me, she said, we're gonna have to move your date. You are releasing your first episode in 1 week. I was like, wait a minute. What do you mean 1 week? I don't even know what I want to talk about first. And that's how it all started. It was just my desire and me going over my fear and limitation that put me in that womb, because I was there to socialize and meet more people so I can get more speaking engagement opportunities. But yet I landed another thing that I wanted to do. And here we are around episode 24, still going strong and still doing what I wanted. And when I think about that, I think about all the time I spent telling myself I needed more, that I needed equipment, more clarity, more setup, more knowledge. But really what I needed was to just step forward and start. And then last week, I had a full circle moment. The school district, one of the school districts in Austin, invited me to do a restorative talk. And this was not just one school. It was staff from multiple schools that were mental health professionals in that room. Some of them have been doing this work for years before I even started. And there I was speaking to them about rest without guilt and the pressure of school mental health work, about what it means to take care of ourselves while holding so much for others. And it blew my mind, because I remember the version of me who thought I needed so many more years before I could be in that room. I remembered the version of me sitting in supervision, thinking how long until I am good enough. And then I realized that it had already started, that my practicum in the schools was part of it. My experience with children was part of it. My work as therapist was part of it. My desire to teach was part of it. My first speaking engagement was part of it. And my podcast was part of it. All of it was part of the path, even when I did not fully see it yet. And that is why I bring this part of myself too sometimes in therapy room, because I see people who have dreams, ideas, desires, things that they want to do, part of themselves they want to express, but then they start telling themselves all of the reasons why they cannot do it. I need to wait, I need more experience, I need to feel more confident, and I need to have this figured out first. I need to be further along, or need someone to choose me. I need to know exactly how this will work. And when I hear all of that, this is where I pause. Because sometimes, yes, preparation is needed, but most of the time there are limitations. There are fears. And I'm not saying that we should just jump into everything without thinking, but most of the time what we call preparation is really fear. It is us hiding behind the idea of being responsible when really we are scared to begin. I know this because I've done it and I'm still working on it. So when I hear someone talk about what they want, I listen for strength. I listen for the desire. I listen for the part of them that already knows there is more. And I listen for barriers, the story, the fear, the wall they created for themselves. And then I ask questions, because that is what therapy does, right? It helps you go deeper. It helps you see what you could not see before. It helps you ask, is this true? Is it a real requirement? Or is this fear? Is this wisdom? Or is this protecting me? Or is it me protecting myself from disappointment? Is this preparation? Or is this me waiting for permission? And I love those moments when the light bulb comes on, when a client realizes, oh, that is actually fear, that I'm comparing myself, that I was waiting for someone else to tell me I could do it. Oh, actually, I can start small. I do not have to have the whole thing figured out right then and there, right? And the important is to take just one step, because sometimes that is where movement begins. Not seeing the whole plan, not with perfect confidence, not with everything figured out, but with one honest step. Fear is not always a sign that you should stop. Sometimes fear is just a sign that something is unfamiliar. Our nervous system is wired to protect us. So when you do something new, your body may say, are you sure this is not what we normally do? That people may judge us, that we may make mistake, that you may not sound perfect. You may not know everything. You may fail. But all that is coming up is normal. That is the body doing what it does. But the question becomes, can you see it for what it is? Can you see it and say, okay, this is fear. This is my nervous system trying to protect me, but I can still take one step. Because even if you wait 5 more years, the fear may still be there. Even if you wait for the title, you wait for the perfect setup, or you wait until you become a supervisor. Even if you wait until 10 years has passed, when you finally do the new thing, it will still be new to your nervous system. Your body may still say, wait, are we safe? So sometimes the answer is not waiting until the fear disappeared. Sometimes the answer is learning how to move with the fear, to do it scared, to take the step anyway. That is how you teach your nervous system to be okay with unfamiliar things. And that is exposure, which is something we use in therapy. When someone has fear about social situations or phobia or something that feels overwhelming, we do not throw them into the biggest thing right away. We expose them little by little, step by step. And slowly the nervous system learns, I did not die. I was scared, but I made it. I was nervous, but I survived. I did not know anything, but I learned. And that is how confidence grows. And I think sometimes we get it backward. We think confidence comes first, then we move. But a lot of times movement comes first, then confidence grows. So I want you to think about something. What is something you have been waiting to do, but you kept telling yourself you are not ready? What is the story you keep repeating? Maybe it's, I need more time, more experience, someone to choose me, to know exactly how it will work, to have everything in place, to feel confident first. And then ask yourself, is that true? Or is that a limitation? Is that wisdom? Or is that fear? Because sometimes we do need preparation. Sometimes we do need a plan. And there are real barriers we need to work through. But to be honest with yourself, is this truly something you need before you begin? Or is it something you're using to avoid beginning? And there's a difference, because sometimes preparation helps us move, and sometimes preparation becomes the place we hide. We searching. watching videos, planning, waiting, buying the notebook, creating the list, telling people one day I want to do this, but never actually taking the first step. I have been there, and this is why I wanted to share this story today, my story today, because if you have been waiting to start something, I want you to be curious about that desire. Not judgmental, just curious. Why does this keep coming back? Why does this matter to me? What part of myself or what part of me feels alive when I think about this? What is the first small step? Because I believe we were created with purpose. The Creator put something in each of us. And sometimes we know, we feel it. We may not have all the words. We may not exactly know how it would look. But we can feel when something is aligned. We can feel when something keeps calling us. And when we start moving towards it, life has a way of bringing us into rooms we did not expect. We're right into a conversation we did not plan, into relationship that helps us get there, and even opportunities that make sense later. I met Theodora, the person who helped me start the podcast, because I went to an event trying to put myself out there. I went there with one intention. I wanted to connect with the author and explore collaboration, and something else open, a friendship, a push, a podcast actually. And that is how life can work sometimes. But if I had stayed home because I did not feel ready, that door would not have opened in that way. So today I want to leave you with this. You may not feel ready. You may feel nervous. You may feel scared. Your body may react. Your mind may give you a list of reasons why now it's not the time. But ask yourself, what is one step I can take? One email, one conversation, one outline, one post, one application, one meeting. One small move toward the thing that keeps calling you. Because you do not have to have the whole path figured out. You do not have to become someone else first. You do not have to wait until fear disappears. You can begin with what you have, and you can let the path teach you as you move. Okay, before we close today, I also want to invite you to join the Free Lakai Within community. It is a WhatsApp community where I share weekly reflections, journal prompts, wellness tools, and encouragement to help you slow down, reflect, and reconnect with yourself. If this episode spoke to something in you and you are looking for a gentle space to continue reflecting, you are welcome to join us. You can find the link in the show notes. Thank you for tuning in to W Ap Koute M, Ap Koute. If this episode resonated, subscribe, leave a review, or share it with someone who might need it. And remember, keep prioritizing yourself, keep learning, and let's heal, grow, and thrive together.